The Rough Country Tie Rod Upgrade Kit is for those of you that have a 1997 to 2006 TJ that are looking for a stronger tie rod without the additional cost of buying one that has much stronger tie rod ends as well. So if you're more interested in bend resistance when you're out hitting the rocks on the trail, this is going to be a good option. If you also want something that's going to be beefier on the tie rod end side of things, so that tie rod ends aren't going to wear out as quickly, you're going to have to go with a different system. However, because this just includes the tie rod and not the ends, it is going to be less expensive than some of those others available. This is going to be a pretty easy install. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 3 wrench installation, maybe a little over an hour or right in that area. The thing that can make this installation a lot longer is if you have a lot of rust and those factory tie rod ends don't want to come out of that factory tie rod. In that situation, you have a couple of choices. You can either work on them to get them out or purchase new factory style tie rod ends to use with this upgraded tie rod kit. That choice is up to you, and we'll talk a little bit more about that installation in just a second. So the tie rod is in an area where it can take a beating, it can get bent. If you're off-road, you're crawling on the rocks. If you do bend your tie rod, your toe will definitely be very far in, and it can make it difficult to even get off the trail, let alone to get home. So having something stronger is going to help eliminate the concern that your tie rod might bend and help eliminate any bends that might happen when you're out on the trail. Like I said before, this is going to be less expensive than the options that are even larger and include heavier duty tie rod ends. This is all about adding strength over what that factory tie rod is going to provide. This is 1.25" DOM or drawn over mandrel tubing. So it is a tube, it's not solid, but it's still going to be very, very strong. This is the same type of material that they build roll cages out of, for instance, because of its strength. So this is designed to flex, not bend, and not break when it's under some serious stress off-road. Again, this will allow you to utilize your factory tie rod ends, which help to keep the cost down. So like I said, pretty easy install here, right around an hour depending on how much rust you have on your Jeep. The first step is going to be removing that factory tie rod from your Wrangler. In order to do that, you'll have to pull your cotter pins, remove your castle nuts, and get the tie rod off of the steering knuckles. Now, the best possible way to do this is to hit the steering knuckle on the flat spot very hard with a large hammer, perpendicular to the tie rod end. Do not smack down on the tie rod end. Even if you leave the castle nut on there, there's always a chance that you're going to mushroom the end of the tie rod, that you're going to cause damage to the threads, to the nut, whatever. Especially with this setup where you're reusing the tie rod end, you don't want to do that. The proper way to do it is to strike that steering knuckle perpendicular to the tie rod end. That'll pop everything out of place. Once you have that factory tie rod removed, you'll take a measurement end to end. You'll remove the jam nuts and then the tie rod ends from the factory tie rod and screw them into your new tie rod, making sure that you adjust the length so that it is the same as your before length. Tighten down your jam nuts and install your new tie rod end into the Jeep. Now, if you have a tie rod end that has a little bit of wear in it, you're not going to be able to tighten down the castle nut with a socket. It's just going to spin that whole shaft inside the tie rod, and you're going to have to use an impact in order to do that. Once you're done, make sure you put those cotter pins back in the castle nuts to ensure that nothing is going to wiggle loose. Now at this point, it's a good time to check your toe because you've just made some adjustments. Even if you measured very, very carefully, even if your new tie rod is the same length as your old one, maybe your toe wasn't properly set before. So a good time to check the toe. That's something that's also very, very easy to adjust in your driveway. You'll have to measure the distance between the front of the tires, the distance between the rear of the tires, and then adjust your tie rod so that you get the proper amount of toe in. This tie rod upgrade kit is going to be around $85. That is going to be one of the least expensive ones that you can find because again, it doesn't include the tie rod ends. It's not for use with a larger, stronger tie rod end. This is just for those factory tie rod ends. It's definitely going to be a strength upgrade for you, but it's not going to do as much for you as some of the more expensive options out there. So if this is all you're looking for, this is a great option. If you want something that's going to give you even more strength and bulkier and beefier tie rod ends, you're going to want to go with one of those other kits. So if you're looking for a stronger tie rod for your TJ, I would recommend taking a look at this inexpensive option from Rough Country, and you can find it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.